This is Chris, and this is going to be my Game of Thrones Season 6 Episode 5 breakdown, but I want to do something a little bit differently today. I'm not going to do an entire episode review as usual because it was pretty straightforward. I will quickly talk about a couple scenes, but I want to specifically talk about the White Walker reveal as well as what happened with Bran and Hodor. I know a lot of people were kind of confused on the whole vision in the past and warging into the present Hodor, etc. So I want to kind of try to explain that, at least in my opinion. I will be doing a Q&A this week as usual, so if you want to know more about these other scenes that I'm basically going to skip over, go ahead and leave me a question in the comments below, and I'll get to that in the Q&A this week. But I want to really get into the Hodor Bran thing because a lot of people are confused on what the hell actually happened. First, let me say that this episode was good. This was one of the best episodes I've ever seen. It was very emotional, obviously. We lost another direwolf in summer. We lost Hodor, Bloodraven. Hell, we lost the remnants of the Children of the Forest, the first people to inhabit Westeros before men came over. So really quickly, we did have an important scene with Jon and Sansa up north discussing war strategy, etc. Jon is now in the mix. He's ready to go fight for Winterfell again. She's becoming really Darth Sansa. She broke it off in Littlefinger's ass. But she let him live and kind of kept that secret in her back pocket, kind of an ace up her sleeve as far as lying to Jon about the Army of the Vale and where she found out about her uncle the Blackfish, so we'll see that in an upcoming storyline as far as Bran going that way. We had a really important scene with Dany and Jorah. I thought was really well done. It was actually kind of an emotional scene as well, where Jorah basically said his goodbyes. They did hint that there was a cure. We know Shireen was cured, so there is a little bit of hope, but this is Game of Thrones. So I kind of saw this as a goodbye scene between Jorah and Dany. Although I do expect him to die, I do expect him to go out in a blaze of glory and somehow help Dany one last time. We had, of course, Arya and Braavos, and this is from the Mercy chapter in Winds of Winter. She's getting her second chance to become a faceless man, and there are no third chances, and she's basically got a mission to assassinate an actor here named Lady Crane. The interesting thing here, she got to go watch this play that basically recreated what she already had to live through back in King's Landing, with Tyrion coming to power and her father Ned getting his head chopped off. So this has got to be on purpose. The faceless men aren't sending her there for no reason. They could have sent anybody on this particular mission, but they wanted to send her there to provoke her and really find out what she's made of. So this is definitely going to continue the conflict within her as to whether to become a faceless man or remain Lady Stark. Also, we had the King's Moot, a very important thing in the books and a lot bigger in the books, although this was basically what happened, but this was pretty good for the show. We had a lot more characters in the books vying for the Salt Throne. In the books, Asha, or Yara in the show, is actually doing the same thing. And then Euron comes up, but he has what's called Dragonbinder. This is one of the mythical horns that's in the books. They didn't include Dragonbinder or apparently the Horn of Winter in the show, and apparently this magical horn can control dragons. So in the show, they're using the gimmick that she needs ships. So now I have a feeling that Euron's the one who burnt Dany's ships in the first place, so he could go offer her his ships for her to come back to Westeros and marry him, of course, to take Westeros together. So basically, Yara is taking her uncle Victarion's storyline where he goes over, he's sent by Euron in the books, and he decides to take Dany and the dragons for himself. So overall, I was happy with the King's Moot. I mean, it could have been a little more in-depth, but I'm okay with it. I understand it is TV. Another really quick scene that was important was Meereen. We had Tyrion and Varys working with Missandei and Grey Worm, discussing their fragile peace based off the deal they made with the Masters. And of course, Tyrion says that's not enough. We need to recruit a religious fanatic. So they meet the new priestess Kinvara, and she comes in and says, basically, you know what? You don't have to recruit me. Dany is Azor Ahai. She is the prince that was promised. I'm here to help. So yes, I'll spread the word. But she gives Varys a little shit because Varys hates magic and sorcerers. You know, he did have a bad experience concerning his manhood. But she kind of makes Varys sweat a little bit, puts him on edge, which you don't really see very often because she knew what happened in the past. And she even asked Varys here, do you want me to tell you who spoke to you in those flames? So I'm thinking, was that her? She is wearing a ruby choker just like Melisandre, so she could possibly be glamored as well. And maybe that was her back then when Varys got his shit cut off. Now, the interesting dynamic here is in Essos, you have all the red priests and priestesses of the red god R'hllor following Dany as Azor Ahai, or the prince that was promised. And you have, of course, Melisandre over in Westeros who thinks Jon Snow is the prince that was promised. So it's going to be interesting when they finally get to meet face to face at some point with all these different points of view about who the savior is. And then, of course, you had the big scene where we got the White Walker reveal. I really wasn't expecting this quickly or this straightforward, but I think it's pretty damn cool to finally find out after all these years where they came from. Now, a lot of us, as far as Ice and Fire nerds, kind of suspected they were connected with the Children of the Forest because it really didn't feel balanced to me as far as the ice side and the fire side. You had the ice side with the White Walkers, and you had the fire side with the dragons and all that. And then you had this kind of third party Children of the Forest nature side of things. So we kind of knew they were connected. We had an idea they were human anyway based off some of the old legends in the books as far as the Night's King. And then of course we see Craster's sons being turned into White Walkers. So we had an idea they were actually human at some point. What's really cool here as far as the dragon glass and the magic involved with creating the first White Walker, I believe this is also what gives them their weakness as far as dragon glass, Valyrian steel, and all things fire. So they basically created a weapon of mass destruction that got out of hand here. So then of course Bran goes back by himself to the lands of Always Winter it in the present time because Bloodraven's apparently taking a nap. Now this time it looks completely different. We got snow all over the ground, obviously, so this is when the seasons are now out of balance because of the creation of the White Walkers. So that kind of answers the question we've always been asking about, do they come with winter or does winter come with them? So it looks like to me that it's a little bit of both. There's natural seasons, but they're thrown off balance. When they get close, they kind of bring winter with them. You can only assume that because if in the past Bran saw the same area with no snow on the ground, and now it's the lands of always winter, that it's always fucking winter there. Then he walks through the group and sees the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and then of course he sees the Night King looking at him. He's like, oh shit, what the hell? He turns around and all the whites are now turned facing him, and then he turns around and the Night King grabs his fucking arm. He immediately wakes up in Bloodraven's cave like, oh shit, he saw me? No, he touched you, and now he's coming for your ass. But then of course Bran's like, well, he can't get in here, and he says he can now because he's marked you. So Bran lifts up his sleeve, has some frostbite, so apparently just the Night King touching him allowed him to track him via GPS. But then we come to the big scene in Bloodraven's cave that I wanted to talk about with Bran and Bloodraven back in a vision again in Winterfell because he's trying to get all his Jedi training in really quickly before the White Walkers show up. And Mira and Hodor are talking about going home and getting a cheeseburger and all that, and their breath gets really cold and they realize the White Walkers are there. Now at this point Hodor is already really nervous, and it's understandable why, because he knew this was coming since he was like 14 years old. Anyway, of course Mira runs outside with the children of the forest. The White Walkers are already there, and they got there quick. And the Night King reaches down and touches the ground and sends this small ice crevice all the way up to the cave door that apparently did nothing. I guess he was just showing off. But the children start throwing their magic turds or Roman candles or whatever the hell they are towards the White Walkers, and they had created this little barrier out of sticks apparently and set that on fire, but the White Walkers come in anyway. So Mira and the children run back in the cave and they're trying to get shit packed up. They're trying to wake Bran up, and she starts screaming, Bran, wake up now. We need Hodor. Warg into Hodor now. And as the Whites come in, the White Walkers come in, they start killing off the children. The children do have dragon glass. That's all they've ever fought with because they never learned to work metal like men, which is why they created the White Walkers in the first place. But I do want to mention here, Mira picks up a spear and throws one and hits one White Walker and kills him, which is kind of a big deal because there's not that very many of them anyway. So it's my opinion that once the last White Walker is killed, if that happens, that all the Whites under their control will simply stop, drop, and stop fucking working for him. So Mira's still screaming to Bran, and Bran starts to hear her in the past in the vision while he's at Winterfell. Now it's cool to throw in here, while he's at Winterfell, we do see Rickard Stark, that's Ned's father, about to send him off to the Eyrie. That's where he goes to be fostered with Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King that died in season 1. And this is of course where he meets Robert Baratheon as they're both fostered together and where they become best friends. So as they're trying to escape, they run out the back door of the cave, leave the last remaining child of the forest, tries to buy her some time kamikaze style and sets off her suicide vest, her thermal detonator, and kills herself while she's being stabbed to death, and that essentially wipes out the original race that inhabited Westeros. Kind of a big deal. Of course they had fucking Summer jump in the middle of a bunch of Whites and die for no apparent reason when Summer could have simply went with Bran, Hodor, and Mira. Why the fuck are you killing off direwolves? We got 2 direwolves and Hodor in 2 episodes. I mean, that was fucking traumatic. Anyway, Hodor, being warged by Bran in the past, finally gets the door open. They get outside, and he gets against the door to hold it closed, and Mira starts screaming at him, hold the door. So since Bran is in the past and near Willis in the yard at Winterfell, I guess because he's probably in the vicinity of young Willis, he is able to now see Bran in the vision just like the Night King did, and young Willis starts experiencing what Hodor in the current time is experiencing holding the damn door. So he starts going into a little seizure-like episode where he starts screaming, hold the door, repeating what Mira is telling him in real time, and this is of course when he loses the ability to say anything but Hodor, and I thought that was pretty damn cool. So what you have here is a little paradox. So a lot of people are going to say, well, why didn't Bloodraven just wake Bran up and they go back and then he could just warg Hodor from the future and get the hell up out of there? The thing is, if he did that, Hodor would have never been with them in the first place. So it's one of these paradox things because Hodor would have remained completely normal. There's no telling where his life would have went. He could have left Winterfell at some point. He could have been somewhere else. He would have never likely carried Bran around as his servant, so he would have never been in this position to escape with Bran and get up to the Three-Eyed Crow in the first place. So then of course his whole entire life after he wakes up from his apparent seizure, he knows what's going to happen to him, and it's essentially his destiny to go and hold that damn door and save Bran's life.
Hold the door!
Oh fuck.
Hold the door! 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 Hold the door!
So what you got here is a time loop. You got a paradox. There's no entry point. There's no exit point. It just happens in a time loop continuously. Bran wargs into current Hodor from the past, and past Hodor is affected and becomes current Hodor. And how fucking genius is that? From the very first episode of this show, we see a guy run around saying Hodor, who's just a big lovable giant who has no agenda, he has no hunger for power or glory or honor or any of that shit. He just wants to live his life and love Lyanna and the Stark family and all that good stuff, but he fucking goes out like a champion saving the damn world because Bran is going to be a huge endgame player. He's going to fit in right there with Jon and Dany as far as the endgame of this thing, but Bran had to do it. Otherwise, Hodor would have never been there in the first place to save Bran's life. So anyway, I want to kind of give you guys my explanation for it. That's what I think is going on and why I think it affected him in the past. Because I was even saying at the time when I was watching it happening, Bloodraven, just go fucking wake him up. Why are you saying listen to your friend? So Bloodraven needed him to do that in the past in order for Hodor to actually be there in the future. So anyway, guys, that's all I had. I just want to throw that stuff out there to you to kind of give you my opinion on what went down. It was sad, it was horrible, but it was also fucking great. I mean, it's fucking genius storytelling. So anyway, I will be doing another Q&A this week as usual, probably with James again. So be sure to leave your question in the comments below. Let me know what you think. How traumatic was it for you? Did you go to bed last night thinking about Hodor and Summer? Did you wake up and go to work feeling shitty all day? Anyway, in the meantime, you can click here for the last video I did, which is my episode 4 review. Check that out. Let me know what you think. And you can also click here on the last Q&A I did with James from Daily Use of Sports Trivia, where we can go over your questions in a format that you guys seem to dig, where he just reads them off directly from the comments section. So check those out. Let us know what you think. As usual, guys, thank you for all the support. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. Special shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thanks for all you do. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, you guys, and we'll see you. Hodor.